Do germs get you sick? Part 4, Bechamp or Pasteur. This is an oldie but a goodie written by Ethel D. Hume and first published in 1923. Pasteur, of course, being the father of germ theory. We've all heard the name. And Bechamp, one of his contemporaries who had a completely different idea of the body and how it works. There have been quite a few books written more recently exposing the fallacies of germ theory, including The Contagion Myth by Sally Fallon and Dr. Thomas Cowan, and Goodbye Germ Theory, written by William P. Trebbing. But Bechamp or Pasteur is the original. I've heard it mentioned a lot in the last few years, but I don't think many people took the time to read it and instead relied on other people in the intelligentsia to interpret it for them, which is an unfortunate situation all around. I even recently saw a clip of Woody Harrelson and Bill Maher discussing germ theory versus terrain theory and mucking it all up. So I can't recommend this book enough if you want to free yourself from the corporate medical system, because it exposes some of the faulty premises on which a lot of that is based. Germ theory is a tough one because it is so ingrained in our minds and our culture, and I naturally fell victim to this hoax, being a product of conventional U.S. schooling and U.S. media. But after reflecting on the works of those in the health freedom movement, if you know what I mean, and common sense, I sought out more information on this topic and was brought to this little book on the subject, which outlines the premise of what the current conventional healthcare system is based. And I know that reading is just not a popular activity these days, but if you really want to free yourself from the matrix, then I would urge you to pick up a copy and read it for yourself, because all of this goes beyond the outrages of the last couple of years. And I will quote Catherine Austin Fitts here, who is a former U.S. presidential cabinet member for George H.W. Bush, who is explaining what the WHO is. And her quote is, "These guys are coming to steal your assets and kill you, literally kill you, and this is a war," end quote. And I'll add that a large part of this war is waged with propaganda and fear, of course, and the most recent one being fear of an unseen, unisolated, unexisting, deadly pathogen. Now, none of these ideas I'm presenting are my own original ideas by any means, and there are numerous lengthy explanations of the phony science that's been pushed on us for decades. Most recently, people like Dr. Andrew Kaufman, Dr. Thomas Cowan, Dr. Berlando, and Josh and Adam Bigelson, just to name a few, have all spoken at length about the deception here. I'm just trying to simplify some of the conversation into basic terms that are easy to grasp in a short video format. And I marvel at the lengths that Dr. Kaufman and Dr. Cowan have gone to explain the faults and inconsistencies in the procedures that mainstream medicine uses to identify what they label as pathogens. The problem is that unless you have a background in lab work or medicine, it can be hard to follow them, and the people who do have a background in medicine do not want to hear any of what they have to say, as that would not be good for business. And I remember hearing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. once say something like, "You can't convince someone to change their mind about something if it affects their paycheck." Now, I come at this more from a simpler perspective. It's a simple concept and one that we can experience from our direct observation. We've all been coughed on or sneezed on by someone, usually one of our little ones who has a cold, and we don't get sick. And why is that? And we've all gotten sick without having been coughed on or sneezed on. So where did the illness come from? And we rationalize these scenarios in a lot of different ways, from thinking we were lucky or unlucky, or our immune system must be strong or weak. But our own simple observation tells us otherwise. And I've previously posted a video on the Boston Harbor experiment, where this phenomenon was tested in a lab with surprising results. So then why do we not believe what our observations are telling us and what experiments like this are telling us? And the answer, of course, is conditioning, which we have all been subject to through our schooling and our television programming, whether that be direct advertising or the programs themselves, which have programmed our minds to accept all sorts of modern myths. But as Ethel B. Hume, the author of Bechamp or Pasteur, noted back in 1923, the erroneous belief that germs cause disease and must be controlled or eliminated before it can be cured is so widespread as to close the minds of many people to any other ideas on the subject. Now, Pasteur was not the first to come up with the germ theory, though he is the most well-known promoter of the theory. The then world-famous English nurse Florence Nightingale published an attack on the idea in 1860, long before Pasteur adopted it and claimed it as his own. Nightingale wrote, I quote, "Diseases are not individuals arranged in classes like cats and dogs, but conditions growing out of one another." She continues, "I've seen diseases begin, grow up, and turn into one another. Now, dogs did not turn into cats." She then goes on to give a lengthy explanation of her observations, which is too long for this video, but ends her quote by saying, "The specific disease doctrine is the grand refuge of weak, uncultured, unstable minds, such as now rule in the medical profession." And again, that was published in 1860, long before Pasteur claimed to have come up with the germ theory. So in a nutshell, according to Pasteur, there's no spontaneous disease. Without microbes, there would be no sickness, no matter what we do, despite our imprudences, miseries, or vices. But if you just read the warning labels on cleaning products or the product insert label on any medication, you will understand the total ridiculousness of that statement. Toxic chemical exposure causes illness. That has been proven. It is not a theory. Germs causing illness, that has not been proven. It is merely a theory, and a disproven one at that. According to Bechamp, germs of disease cannot exist primarily in the air we breathe, in the food we eat, or in the water we drink. For the diseases, microorganisms unscientifically described as germs proceed necessarily from a sick body. Every diseased microzyma has originally belonged to an organism, that is, a body of some sort, whose state of health was reduced to a state of disease under the influence of various causes, which determined a functional change in the microzymas of some particular center of activity. Now, that's a mouthful, of course, but I'll tell you what he's saying here is that the germs come from inside of us. Our bodies produce them as a response to injury. The book goes on to explain it is noteworthy that neither Pasteur nor any of his successors have ever induced an illness by the inoculation of airborne bacteria, but only by injections from bodily sources. However, success seems sufficient to Pasteur for a commercial asset to be made of the supposed prophylactic injection. It does not take much observation to note that profits obstruct unbiased criticism, and thus real investigation was checked by Pasteur's alliance of science with commercialism. End quote. The book goes on to document many animal studies and human use of Pasteur's concoctions that ended in abject failure, including a French postman who, though not bitten by a dog, was coerced into a rabies treatment by the Postal Service, which proved fatal for the postman. However, when money is at stake, common sense often flies out the window. And the book concludes that had it not been for the commercial aspect of the Pasteur concoctions, his germ theory of disease would have collapsed into obscurity. Please like and subscribe for more health and healing tips like this. And if you want more information, you can log on to my website at helpwithhealthandhealing.com, where you can download my free report, What Really Causes Disease. Thanks again.